Hi, welcome, friends, to another episode of What I'm Reading Now, Live with Purpose. Thank you for joining me as we explore remarkable books, extraordinary lives, and timeless truths that inspire us to live with greater purpose. Today, I want to invite you to travel back with me more than 250 years, and I wanted to bring this episode today because we're celebrating the 250th year of our nation, and we're going to be looking today at some revolutionary women who were alive 250 years ago. So let's go back to America when America was only still a dream. There was no Constitution, no White House, no United States Capitol, only 13 fragile colonies struggling to survive one of the greatest conflicts in the history. Families were divided, communities were uncertain, the future was unknown. Yet in the middle of that uncertainty, God was quietly writing his own story. The great devotional writer, Oswald Chambers, once observed, listen to what he said, God has an itinerary and he does not share it with you. Isn't that true? What remarkable wisdom that he said. How often we have wished God would reveal every step of our journey ahead of us, right? Instead, he invites us to trust him one day at a time. Although we really know God's itinerary for our own lives, we can look back at the completed itineraries of those who have gone before us. This is what we're doing today. Their stories remind us that God is faithful even when his plans are hidden. That is why I wrote this message, this story. Today we will journey alongside several remarkable women whose quiet faithfulness helped sustain a nation during the American Revolution. Their names may not appear as often as Washington, Adams, or Franklin, yet their courage, their perseverance, and their service shaped in our history in ways that still inspire us today. As I study these women, these revolutionary women, I found myself returning again and again to Proverbs 31. Many people read that chapter and think it describes an impossible woman. I have come to see it differently. Rather than presenting perfection, Proverbs 31 paints a portrait of godly character, a woman who grows through faithfulness, courage, diligence, compassion, and wisdom. Throughout this episode, we'll see the portrait reflected in the lives of 7 revolutionary women who lived centuries after these verses were written. Their stories remind us that biblical principles are timeless. Yes, biblical principles are timeless. To help us remember these qualities, I'd like to use the word wise, which we're going to use an acronym, WISE. A wise woman is W, willing. I, she's industrious. S, she's sensitive. And E, she is effectual. Let's begin with the first quality, willing. W is for willing. The writer of Proverbs tells us she seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. Willingness is much more than good intentions. It is the quiet decision to say yes when God places an opportunity or a responsibility before us. Throughout Scripture, God consistently works through willing people who may not have felt fully prepared, but who trusted him enough to take the next step. The revolutionary women we'll meet today demonstrated that same spirit. They did not wait for ideal circumstances. They simply asked, what needs to be done? And they did it. What needs to be done? And they did it. So let's look at our first revolutionary, Martha Washington. Imagine the winter of 1777 at Valley Forge. Snow covers the frozen ground. Smoke rises from rough log huts. The Continental Army is exhausted. Many soldiers have no shoes. Some wrap their bleeding feet in strips of cloth to protect them from the bitter cold. Food is scarce. Disease spreads through the camp. Hope itself seems to be fading. Into that difficult setting comes a familiar carriage. Inside is Martha Washington. She has not come for recognition. She has not come for comfort. She has come to serve. While General George Washington, carried the burden of leading an army, Martha quietly strengthened the army in ways history often overlooks. She organized sewing circles. She helped provide clothing. She comforted sick soldiers. She encouraged officers' wives. She reminded weary men that they had not been forgotten. Often, one visitor expected to find the wife. One visitor who visited expected to find the wife of the commander-in-chief enjoying comfort. Instead, he found her knitting. She was knitting socks for the soldiers. What a beautiful picture of servant leadership. Martha once said, listen to what she said, "The greater part of our happiness or misery," she said, "depends upon our dispositions, she said, and not upon our circumstances." No, she didn't take the circumstances into account. Those words still challenge us today. She could not change the weather. She could not instantly provide every need those soldiers had, but she could choose her attitude. She could choose to serve. She could choose to bring hope, and she did. Let's look at another revolutionary woman who lived during this time, Deborah Franklin. Our next stop is Philadelphia. While Benjamin Franklin spent years serving the colonies abroad, Deborah Franklin remained at home carrying responsibilities that few people recognized. He left everything in her care. She managed the finances. She oversaw business affairs, and he had numerous businesses. She even purchased property, proudly writing to Benjamin that she had become something of a land jobber. That's a landowner, and I love that. I love the idea of owning land. When unrest threatened their home during the opposition to the Stamp Act, Deborah remained steadfast. Her courage was not displayed on the battlefield. It was displayed through faithful stewardship. She reminds us that willingness is often expressed through quiet perseverance. Sometimes the greatest acts of courage happen when no one is watching. This is true. This is true. Nobody sees your acts of courage. Let's look at our next protagonist, Abigail Adams. I love her. Then we meet Abigail Adams. History remembers her for her one famous phrase that she wrote to her husband. They kept correspondence throughout this time. She told her husband, John Adams, "Remember the ladies. Remember the ladies when you're writing this new Constitution." Abigail's willingness extended far beyond those words. She managed her household during long separations from her husband. She offered thoughtful counsel through her letters. We have that evidence. She demonstrated wisdom, conviction, and strength during one of the most uncertain periods in American history. She understood that future generations, this is what she said, would scarcely comprehend, she said, the hardships endured by those who secured their freedoms. All the work that they suffered secured our freedoms. How powerful. She knew they were making sacrifices for us. So let me reflect personally. As I reflect on these remarkable women, I am reminded that willingness still changes lives today. Sometimes it looks like opening your home for prayer. Sometimes it looks like standing for truth when it would be easier just to remain silent. Sometimes it looks like caring for a loved one through illness, one day at a time. These acts may never make headlines, yet they matter deeply to God. So let's linger. Before we move on, let me ask you, I'd like to leave you with a question. Where is God calling you to be willing? Is there a conversation you've been postponing? A ministry you've been hesitant to begin? A person who simply needs you to show up? Remember, God rarely reveals the entire itinerary. He usually reveals the next faithful step. May we have the courage to say to God, yes, Lord. So next we'll discover the second quality of a wise revolutionary woman, and that is industrious. We'll meet women whose diligent work, perseverance, and vision helped strengthen a nation and left a legacy that continues to inspire us today. So let's look at the word industry. The writer of Proverbs gives us another glimpse into the character of a godly woman. Listen to what the Proverbs writes. She rises while it is yet night. Her lamp does not go out by night. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Notice what the scripture celebrates. It's not fame. It's not status. It's not comfort. It celebrates faithfulness. The Proverbs 31 woman understands that ordinary work done faithfully becomes an act of worship. Industry is not simply keeping busy. No, it is using every gift God has entrusted to us with diligence, excellence, and purpose. That is what industry is. So let's look at some revolutionary women who demonstrated and embodied industry. Esther Reed, have you heard of her? Our story now takes us to Philadelphia. The city is alive with activity. Horse-drawn wagons move through narrow streets. Church bells ring in the distance. The Continental Congress meets nearby in the sweltering heat, wrestling with decisions that will shape a nation, our nation. Yet another revolution is quietly taking place, not in governmental buildings, but in homes. One remarkable woman helped lead that movement, and her name is Esther Reed. Esther understood that patriotism required more than words. It required action. Under her leadership, the Ladies Association of Philadelphia, listen to what they did, organized women throughout the city to support the Continental Army. How did they do that? Together, they raised an extraordinary sum of money for the soldiers back then. Originally, the women hoped to give each soldier a personal gift. They wanted to give each one of the soldiers a personal gift. But General George Washington suggested another idea. He said the money could provide something every soldier desperately needed. You know what that was? Clothing. And so the women began to sew. Imagine the scene. Long wooden tables, candles burning late into the evening, needles moving steadily through cloth, women talking quietly as they stitched, some praying for husbands, some praying for sons, some wondering whether loved ones would ever return home. One shirt, and then another shirt, and then another, and eventually more than 2,000 shirts were completed by these women. Each one carefully marked with the name of the woman who made it. Think about that. Each man received that shirt with the woman's name on it, a personal identification saying that woman was thinking about them as they were stitching it together. Every stitch represented gratitude. Every thread represented hope. Every shirt became a reminder to a weary soldier that someone at home believed his sacrifice mattered. These are the people that made the difference. That is industry. Not simply working hard, working with purpose, working with love. During those same years, churches organized spinning bees where women gathered from early morning until evening, spinning wool together for the common good. And this happened all over the country. History often remembers battles. It sometimes forgets the hands that made victory possible. These women remind us that service behind the scenes can change the course of history. Those spinning bees, all those women spinning, working together every day, was providing clothing for these men. So let's look at our next revolutionary, Eliza Lucas Pinckney. Now let us travel south to the colony of South Carolina. Here we meet a remarkable young woman. I love this because she's so young. Her name is Eliza Lucas. She's only 16 years old. Most young people her age are still discovering who they are. Eliza is suddenly responsible for managing 3 plantations while her father serves overseas, and he left her responsible to take care of these plantations. It would have been easy to become overwhelmed. Instead, she embraced the responsibility. In one letter, she wrote that she considered it a privilege to be useful to her father, and that by rising early, she found she could accomplish a great deal each day. Those words reveal her heart. She did not complain about responsibility. She embraced it. Eliza was curious. She loved learning. She studied agriculture. She experimented with indigo, a crop many believed could never become successful in the colonies. Her first attempt failed, then another, and another, but she refused to give up. Eventually, her perseverance transformed the economy of the South. This plant, this indigo plant, really helped the South to thrive. Her successful indigo crop provided the blue dye needed for cloth and became one of the colony's most valuable exports. One young woman, that's the jeans we wear today. One young woman, one willingness to learn, one commitment to perseverance, and history changed. So industry today, let's talk about it today. Industry, I've learned, is not about extraordinary talent. No, it's about extraordinary faithfulness. So let's linger. Before we move into the next chapter, I'd like to leave you with a few questions. What responsibility has God placed in your hands today? Are you pursuing excellence in the work He is giving you? How are you teaching diligence to the next generation? Perhaps industry begins with something very simple, finishing what you started, developing a gift maybe, serving faithfully where God has planted you. Remember, the fruit of tomorrow is often hidden in today's quiet acts of perseverance. The fruit of tomorrow is often hidden in today's quiet acts of perseverance. So now let's explore the third quality of a wise revolutionary woman. She's sensitive. Here we will discover women who understand the times in which they lived, recognized the needs around them, and responded with wisdom, compassion, and courage. So far, we've explored 2 remarkable qualities of a wise revolutionary woman. She is willing, she is industrious. Now we will arrive at the quality that often receives less attention, yet may be one of the most important of all. She is sensitive. Sensitive, not in the sense of being easily offended, no, but spiritually aware. Aware of God's leading, aware of the needs of others, aware of the unique moment in history in which God has placed her. The writer of Proverbs reminds us that the godly woman, listen to what it says, provides food for her household, extends her hand to the poor, opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Notice the common thread here. She is paying attention. She notices what others overlook. She sees needs before they become crises. She understands that wisdom is not simply knowing many things. No, wisdom is knowing what to do at the right time. And that's really, I do believe that. One of my favorite biblical examples is found in the sons of Issachar. Scripture says they were men who understood the times and knew what Israel ought to do. I believe God is still looking for people like that today. People who understand the times, people who recognize opportunities to serve, people who respond with courage rather than fear. That was certainly true of the revolutionary women we are about to meet. The next revolutionary woman we meet is Elizabeth Ellis Pond. Now, this is exciting because now we're returning to Massachusetts, where we are. The smoke of the battle still lingers after the fighting at Lexington, and I've went to a reenactment. It was so exciting to be part of it. The roads are covered with weary soldiers. Many have marched for hours. They are hungry, exhausted, unsure of what tomorrow will bring. One morning, nearly 100 soldiers arrive outside the home of Colonel Pond. He wasn't there, just his wife. Only one person is there to greet them, his wife, Elizabeth Ellis Pond. Imagine standing at your front door and seeing 100 hungry men waiting for food. Most of us would immediately think, how could I possibly feed all of them? But Elizabeth thought differently. She simply began. She gathered what food she had, and actually the story is told that she goes to her neighbors and asked them for food. The neighbors joined her. Together they prepared meals until every soldier had been cared for. What a beautiful picture of sensitivity. She did not wait for someone else to solve the problem. She recognized the need before her and responded with compassion. Sometimes God places opportunities in front of us that seem much larger than our resources. Yet time and again, he multiplies willing hearts. Elizabeth reminds us that sensitivity often begins with one simple question. Listen to what it is. What can I do today? What can I do today? Not next year, not when life becomes easier, today. So let's look at another example of these remarkable women, and that's in their making of Liberty Tea. Another remarkable example of sensitivity came several years earlier. Many colonial women realized that every purchase they made communicated something about their values. The British Tea Act had become a symbol of oppression. And so women across the colonies made an extraordinary decision. Listen to what they did. Rather than continuing to purchase imported British tea, they created what became known as Liberty Tea. Imagine kitchens filled with fragrance of herbs gathered from nearby fields, mint, raspberry leaves, goldenrod, I love goldenrod, flowers and native plants carefully blended into teas that represented far more than a beverage. Each cup became a quiet declaration of conviction. I'm not drinking British tea. Well, we're going to make our own tea. More than 300 families, 300, pledged to abstain from imported tea altogether, believing that their personal choices could contribute to larger cause of liberty. Yes, they made sacrifices, no more imported tea. History sometimes celebrates dramatic speeches and famous battles, yet revolutions are often sustained by ordinary decisions repeated faithfully day after day, and we're living in a revolutionary moment now. These women understood that faithfulness begins in the small choices long before it appears in the great moments of history, small choices that you make day to day. So how does this come true through Proverbs 31? A Proverbs 31 woman is also sensitive to opportunities. She sees beyond the present moment. She understands that today's decisions shape tomorrow's future. Absolutely. Today's decisions shape tomorrow's future. The truth is just as important today. Every generation faces different challenges. For some families, sensitivity may mean, recognizing that a child needs encouragement rather than criticism. For others, it may mean caring for aging parents. For still others, it may mean becoming involved in a local school, serving on a community board, volunteering through church ministries, or mentoring a younger believer. Sensitivity begins with paying attention. Pay attention. Paying attention to God, paying attention to people around you, paying attention to the opportunities that quietly appear in everyday life. So let's reflect. So when I personally think about this, when I think about these revolutionary women, I am reminded that success is often about timing. I have long believed that success is doing the right thing at the right time. Throughout my own life, there have been moments when God quietly opened a door. Not every opportunity looks significant at first, yet looking back, I can see his hand preparing me one step at a time for the work he had planned long ago. Perhaps you've experienced that as well. What seemed like an ordinary decision became a turning point. What felt like a small act of obedience became part of God's larger purpose. That is often how he works. So let's linger. Before we continue, I'd like to leave you with a few questions. Where is God asking you to become more attentive? What need have you noticed that others have overlooked? Is there someone who simply needs your encouragement? A neighbor, a child, a friend, a stranger? Remember, God really calls us to solve every problem. He simply asks us to be faithful with the opportunities He has placed before us. May we become women and men who understand the times in which we live, who respond with wisdom, who respond with kindness, and who extend our hands to those in need. So now let's explore the last quality of our wise revolutionary woman, and that's the letter E for effectual. We'll discover what it means to leave a lasting legacy, meet an extraordinary woman whose courage helped change the course of history and justice in America, and conclude with a challenge to become the kind of people whose lives continue to bless generations long after we're gone. We've traveled through the lives of remarkable women whose faithfulness shaped our nation. We have discovered that wise revolutionary woman is willing, she's industrious, she's sensitive. Now we come to the final quality, effectual. The word effectual means producing the desired result, making a lasting difference. That's what these women did, leaving behind something that continues to bless others long after we are gone. The writer of Proverbs paints this beautiful picture. Listen to what the writer says. Strength and dignity are her clothing. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Give her the reward she has earned, and let her works praise her in the gates. Notice that Proverbs 31, woman leaves more than possessions. She leaves influence. She leaves character. She leaves a legacy. So let's live a life that leaves a legacy. One of the remarkable truths of history is that some of the greatest changes begin with one courageous decision. One person, one moment, one act of faith. That is exactly what we see in the life of Elizabeth Freeman, often known as Mumbet. Born into slavery, Elizabeth listened carefully when she heard the words of the Massachusetts Constitution, declaring that all people are born free and equal. She heard it for herself. These words awakened something deep and within her heart. Rather than accepting injustice as unchangeable, she sought legal counsel and courageously brought her case before the courts. In 1781, listen to what she did. The court ruled in her favor. That decision became one of the important legal precedents leading to the end of slavery in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has always been spearheading the future. We've always been at the forefront. Imagine the courage that required. She possessed no political office, no wealth, no public influence, yet she possessed something greater: conviction, faith, dignity. She reminds us that one faithful life can influence generations yet unborn. Quiet acts that changed history. During the Revolution, women quietly challenged British policies, not only with words, but with their daily choices. Listen to what they did. They wore homespun clothes instead of imported fabric. And there was a funeral where all the women sew their own clothing as a rebellion against the British. They boycotted British goods. They prepared Liberty Tea, which we discussed. These actions may have seemed small at the time, yet together they demonstrated unity, courage, and conviction. History often remembers dramatic speeches. God also remembers quiet obedience. Every faithful decision matters. Every faithful decision, everything they did. So how do we do that? How do we become effectual? Know your calling. One of my favorite themes throughout this study is the importance of knowing your calling. The Proverbs 31 woman understood her gifts. She cared for her family. She conducted business. She served her community. She used her abilities to bless others. She did not try to become someone else. No, she faithfully became the woman God created her to be. That truth speaks just as powerfully today. Whether you are married or single, raising children, or mentoring others, working inside the home or outside it, serving in ministry, or serving quietly behind the scenes, God has entrusted you with your unique gifts. Your calling may look different from mine. Mine may look different from yours. But every calling matters when it is offered back to God. So let's reflect. Near the end of my life, I want to reflect about my mother. After hearing some difficult news from her doctors, and this is what my mother said, she was near the end of her life. She said, I made things possible. I love that. She could have said so many other things, but she said, I made things possible. Not I became famous, not I accumulated wealth, simply I made things possible. What a remarkable definition of a life well lived. She understood that significance is measured by the lives touched. That significance is measured by the lives touched, by opportunities created, by faithfulness offered. As I reflect on those words, I cannot help but think about all the revolutionary women we've met through this episode. Martha Washington made hope possible. Abigail Adams made wise counsel possible. Esther Reed made compassion possible. Eliza Lucas Pinckney made innovation possible. Elizabeth Ellis Pond made hospitality possible. Elizabeth Freeman made justice possible. Different women, different gifts, one faithful God. Living wise today. As we bring our journey to a close, remember that we too are living in significant times. Every generation faces its own challenges. Every generation needs women and men of character, people willing to serve, people willing to work diligently, people sensitive to God's leading, people committed to leaving a legacy that honors Him. History is not only shaped by presidents and generals, it is shaped by teachers, parents, grandparents, neighbors, volunteers, mentors, ordinary people who quietly choose faithfulness every day. Perhaps God has placed you exactly where you are for such a time as this. So let's linger at the end. Before we conclude, I'd like to ask you 4 simple questions. Where is God calling you to become more willing? How is He asking you to become more industrious? What opportunities is He inviting you to notice with greater sensitivity? And finally, what kind of legacy do you hope your life will leave? Remember, your greatest influence may never appear in a history book, but it may be written upon the hearts of those whose lives you faithfully touch. Yes. So thank you for joining me in this episode of What I'm Reading Now, Live with Purpose. And as you go, remember this week, this month, remember, be willing, be industrious, be effectual, and above all, live with purpose. And I hope to see you next month as we look at What I'm Reading Now, Live with Purpose. Thanks for joining me.